Hello and welcome to the Journal of Expressive Writing feature and open mic, our monthly program. I'm Kelly DuMar and I am your host tonight. And I am pleased to be here with you. We're so grateful to the Journal of Expressive Writing, Jen Minotti, our founder and our editor, who makes the space available for all of us to come and gather once a month. So we're so glad to be here tonight. And it is Thursday, May 18th, 2023. And I'm excited to introduce Tommy Archuleta, who is our featured poet for this evening. And he will be reading from his books of poetry just very, very soon. I quickly want to check in with Jen Minotti and see if you want to say hello to everybody tonight.
Thank you, Kelly. I just wanted to say hi. It's so great to see everybody. And as I've said before, this is the highlight of my month. I love seeing all of you and getting to hear all of your fabulous writing and poetry. And I'm especially thrilled tonight to have Tommy with us and the 15 readers who are going to read in our open mic. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here.
By the way, our 20th open mic, Jen, thank you for counting.
Yes.
And also happy anniversary, 3-year anniversary of the Journal of Expressive Writing.
Yes, May 15th was our 3-year anniversary. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kelly, for making these open mics possible. I could not have done it without Kelly. This is all Kelly. All the open mic is Kelly. So thank you.
It's been all of us together as a community, absolutely, for sure. And particularly those of you who have come month after month and been in our open mic and really supported us on a very deep level. Thank you to all of you. So I'm excited to introduce our guest for tonight. And I'm going to read one of Tommy's poems to open our evening. I think I will actually start by doing that first. I'm going to share my screen too, because I thought you would want to see the layout of this poem as well. So this is Tommy Archuleta's poem published in the at poets.org. And I'm going to be reading this one, which is called Remedio, Osatillo, Candlewood, Tommy Archuleta. To forgive one's life, love for dying, pick the long feather-like crimson flowers in early spring when the desert is in bloom. Boil in river water only. Let cool. Drink at once. Drink when waking, at noon and at bedtime each day for 3 full weeks thereafter. If resentment persists, go to your beloved's grave daily and pray for forgiveness until sound sleep and appetite return. My last days, may they pass slow as black smoke, goes father's only prayer of late. No, I'm certain that he stole it from Adam. I'm sure who first uttered it just outside the garden, the first night he spent alone. I wanted to show you this poem so that you could see the format, because I want to ask Tommy about this unique format that he's written a number of the poems in the 2 poetry books that he's going to read from tonight. And Tommy amazingly has a really unusual, bountiful thing going on, which I really admire and am impressed by. He's got 2 books out this spring of 2023, believe it or not. And one of them is a chapbook by Lily Poetry Review Books. And the other is a full-length collection, Susto, which is published by, I'm going to have to double check that, the Center for Literary Publishing at Colorado State University Press. And Field Notes is the name of his Lily Poetry Review Books chapbook. So that's pretty incredible. Good fortune for all of us, and I'm sure for Tommy. So let me tell you a little bit before Tommy joins us about his full-length book, Susto. It is said to be surreal yet earthbound, orphaned yet mothered more than most, comforting yet disturbing. Tommy Archuleta's Susto surveys many settings: the body, the soul, the terrain the soul encounters upon leaving the body. But the setting is also the high desert landscape that is the poet's northern New Mexico home, a land whose beauty today is as silencing and brutal as was the colonization of the region and her Anasazi descendants by Archuleta's Spanish antepasados. Now, the writer Matt Donovan calls Tommy's book, Susto, a searing, unforgettable debut, comprising poems that read like incantations for survival. Here are prayer-like words offered after every other prayer has failed. Here is a speaker deeply haunted by loss, as well as by our failed attempts to mend what is broken. These honed and urgent poems, somehow both unworldly and deeply rooted in the world, explore the limits of language, of ritual and belief, all the while seeking consolation for our inconsolable selves. And then I'd also like to read you what the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Diane Seuss has written about Susto. And she writes, Susto is a whittled bone of a book, seething with marrow. In Archuleta's realm, loss is not an abstraction and grief is not simply a feeling. Instead, they inspirit every element of the external world: the wolf, the chokecherry tree, the window, the moth, the rose, and enfever the body, the mind, the dream, and the nightmare. The dead here are relentlessly unsentimental. They don't just haunt, they live unfettered by metaphor. The remedio comes through in ritual prose poems that serve as counterpoint to the Susto's honed music. When it works, the specter becomes once more the beloved, though the fever, it's in us for good, just like the valley, just like the moon. In Susto, Archuleta has delivered us back to the bottom line sublime. Tommy Archuleta's poems have appeared in the New England Review, Laurel Review, Lily Poetry Review, the Cortland Review, Guest House, and Poem a Day series sponsored by the Academy of American Poets. His debut full-length collection, entitled Susto, by the Center for Literary Publishing, Colorado State University Press, and his debut chapbook, Field Notes, Lily Poetry Review, were both released in April 2023. He lives and writes on the Cochiti Reservation. I give you now, welcome to you, Tommy.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly and Jen, for inviting me. Kelly, we met at AWP this year, which was an incredibly traumatic thing. It was a traumatic experience for me. It was my first one, and we got to read in that wonderful Seattle Public Library, which looked like a spaceship to me, actually. Yeah, wow. It really is humbling to have to read good things written about you, isn't it?
It's a little humbling. We ask you to bear with us because it's so helpful for the audience to know a little bit about you, Tommy. There's a lot to know.
No, it's fine. I'm learning how to. I mean, I've never done this. You know, for most of us, it's such a secluded life that we live. You know, especially, you know, even in the wake of COVID, I guess we all survived that. And and my father and I, we both survived having COVID. We both were hospitalized, and so I just want to explain a little bit, Susto, the title, to help maybe frame that book. I'll be reading mostly from that collection, and I'll open with one poem from the chapbook. But so Susto technically is the most common definition in Spanish is shock, and also fright. I got a lot of assistance from Eliseo Torres, who teaches curanderismo at the University of New Mexico. For those unfamiliar, it's a practice that has Aztec and Mayan roots, and it's essentially just a medicinal practice of using indigenous plants and roots for any number of maladies, mostly physical, not always, sometimes existential maladies, but in its more modern practice, it's for things like headaches and stomach issues, inability to sleep, those kinds of things. And I was raised, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather practiced curanderismo. My mother dabbled in it. And so there's that piece. The other piece is I'm a mental health counselor, and I was I moved in to help my father with my mother's condition, which was she had gotten diagnosed with congestive heart failure. And so from diagnosis to the day she died, she passed in August of 17 of 13, that experience, I'd never experienced grief at that level. And I actually wouldn't, everything stops. And as you know, in our field, I guess they call it complicated grief, where you can't do much of anything. It looks a lot like major depressive disorder, actually. And so I was accepted into a graduate program for social work, and I was supposed to start the week after Mom died, and I couldn't even feel my feet or my face at that time. And so I went to a class, and I mean, it felt like I had walked into like some sort of fourth dimension. I just everything looked billowy, and I knew I just didn't belong there. And they let me go home. They told me, you know, your space is here, your place is here. Go home, honor your grief, support your father's grief, and I did. And I was able to get my legs under me, and by January I felt like I wanted to go back, but I didn't go with the social work. I went with counseling. As I started to report for school, I started to wake up early in the morning, and these short little lyrics started to come out, which would eventually end up being Susto. Then I found a book in my mother's things that had her writing in it, but it was also a very old book, and it was all about herbs and utilizing them. But it wasn't necessarily about curanderismo. It just, I recognized it as that, as such. And yeah, so in studying for grad school in the DSM 5th edition, they started to include culture-based maladies. And in the back there was this condition called susto, described as the soul separating from the body as the result of a traumatic event. When I read that, I knew that that was going to be the title, but it also explained what the hell was going on with me. And so I'm gonna start a little bit just this reading with one poem out of Field Notes, and then we'll move into Susto. I want to apologize ahead of time. I am not a happy, cheery poet. I'm sorry. There's no candies in here. There's no rainbows. So if you came for that, please smoke them if you got them. And, but I want to thank everybody for, I think it's wonderful. I love readings like this where we all get to participate with our own work. So thanks for everybody that's come in tonight with your stuff in your heart and your mind and your ears. My first love letter from the valley. I can't find it anywhere. Maybe it's out roaming again, what used to be the banks of what used to be the river. And now it's staring at what it calls a thumbnail moon, but I call a flying sickle. Autumn means the trees aren't dying, baby, only changing. To think we survived the shock of going from all that glorious warm darkness to all that frightening fluorescent light, only to spend how much of our lives gathering and storing, loss after loss, until traveling by crawling becomes our go-to art form. So, I mean, I just kind of open with that because, I mean, grief and loss is such a part of our lives, and it manifests in so many different ways. And not long ago, I started to really embrace Thich Nhat Hanh's concept of leaning into suffering, befriending it. As odd as that sounds, and sounded to me in the beginning when I first heard it, but I think poetry in a way it offers us that kind of opportunity to do that when the time comes. So there's going to be these remedios that kind of work as cairns or even poles or columns throughout the work. And so the section I'm going to read, there's going to be a few of these. The voice of the remedios is really kind of a, Rodolfo Anaya's Ultima. It's kind of like that kind of a voice. It's very grounded, and so in a way, this book is kind of paying tribute to Mr. Anaya, who passed recently. And then I'll just say this, that there isn't one speaker here. If it's true that there is a soul, and if a soul can separate from the body, one question that this book asks is, would that soul encounter other souls, and would there be a discussion? The same for the body that's walking around without a soul, what would happen with it? So here we go. Remedio anil de muerto. To aid safe passage, pick the blue-green leaves when the flowers have fully bloomed. Air for one day and one night prior to mashing. Coat the tip of a wooden stake with the pulp before driving it into the foot of the loved one's grave. Bury the rest of the pulp at the base of the headstone. Pray ceaselessly as before. I forget, was it you or me they caught welcoming the first frost with drums and bellflowers the year mother's mind went the way of the orchard? Was it you or me who hears laughter, ribbons of it, coming from the grave, with not one single death green plastic vase to speak of? What torture of all tortures, wouldn't you say, for that one sunstruck plastic flower? From here, these clouds must look black to him. Black as his first guitar. Ever notice how hard it is to breathe when you can't stop bleeding? Here, where every little hook you find makes a little cut that hates the word heal. Here, where time means smoke and means flying, and the eyes mean this close to useless. From dust this hope to die red, rounds and rounds of bread, gold as the sun. Imagine. And on that bridge, on its railing, the crow behind me saying, the higher you fly, the darker life becomes. The darker life becomes, the more you find forms of silence you never before knew existed. There, the mayor's plow horse can now roam free, at least until noon, when the hunters return from the canyon. The scrub jays leave the fields for the river. The dying review yesterday's vespers, and father sits down to write his daily love letter to suffering, with or without pen and paper. You're right. I best go check on him. Most nights it's the cane carved from redwood you come to first, followed by the spool of chain near the backboard wagon. Then comes the freestanding door that, when opened and walked through, takes you to the towering black iron oven, its mouth seldom open, except to eat more apple tree branches that scream, to use your words, just like the Pueblo children. So I live on the Cochiti Reservation, and not far from where I live, brutally and sadly, my ancestors who came with Cortez circa 1598, in order to make a point, tied 18 Cochiti children to the trees down by the bosque, and tortured them to death. And the Cochiti, when their feast day comes, have a special dance to the souls of those children. Remedio, preparación. When preparing to call the soul back, first ask the earth for permission to take from her only what will be needed. Next, offer a new fire prior to gathering osha root, mugwort, and rosemary. Bathe the entire catch in river water. Soak overnight. The next day, mash, then combine all contents in a glass container. A mason jar will do, but do not cover. Add rubbing alcohol to the mixture to release all healing properties. Place the jar in a dry, dark place for 3 days and 3 nights. Whatever you say here dies twice the instant you say it, or haven't you noticed? no different than the snapdragons we threw down into the damp dark of mother's open grave. But don't feel bad. I never know who's talking either. Me, you, or the furthest star whose light, though brave, will never, ever reach us. So, I have absolutely no idea how much time I have left, so I would appreciate maybe like, I don't know, a whistle.
Oh, okay, sure. Why don't, yeah, go ahead and take 5 more minutes. And I will,
Yeah, something,
I'll do something.
do something. I'm not telepathic, so I don't do a thought thing.
I'll give you a bell or a gong or something, Tommy.
That would be cool. I would really appreciate that. This place, the light here, these clouds, if that's what they are, everything really red as the earth as you enter the valley from the south. My poor hands, just look at them. This one, a day, maybe 2 away from ether. But this one, thank God, is still able somehow to open and close, open and close. Say little knives litter the ground of every life we survive. Now, say the mind stores some, but the body houses all. Only say these things over and over, crawling end to end across the valley floor, and I'll tell you what your true name and symbols mean in Spanish. I found a trove of family albums that my mother was building. I don't know when she planned to release them. But I found them in a box buried deep in her closet. Her welcoming the first frost mid-orchard at dawn with song. The surest way to offend the god of ruin. Her and a basket of bellflowers, naming them one by one in the cool cellar dark. Her picking apricots in a corner of the living room in the middle of the night, enrolled in moonlight, enough to mum you. Pictures you never took, but that live like she does inside of you. To survive this side, where love keeps rhyming everything with loss. Are there any maps to a far less crushing sorrow, also known as breathing? No, but if you keep singing to me till your tongue whitens, your throat clenches, tires, raws, I'll let you steal more apples. Anymore I wake as if holding a sword, my hand bones unwilling to unfold, just like my father's and every other father before him. No more food left, no water, nothing but the moon and darkest stars to live on. Nothing to come quell the loneliness, rivaling that of the frozen canyon floor. My last days. So this this is a rewrite, so I'm sorry. What you read, Kelly, was an earlier version, so I hope I don't. Is that a sin? Is that okay to do? Can I read that? It's just
Of course.
okay. Okay.
Do it. Yes, this will be your last one, and go ahead and do it. Yes.
Are you sure? Okay. Just want to make sure that we're not. My last day is, may they pass slow as black smoke, begins the new prayer Father wrote just yesterday. I forget how the rest goes. No. No, that one he stole from Adam, I'm sure, who wrote it the first night he spent alone just outside the garden.
Mm. Thank you so much, Tommy. Thank you. That was, I know it's so hard not to hear audience response and to sort of read out into the silence. But yes, your poems have landed, and I'm looking forward to, whoops, I meant to give you and me spotlights. So why is it saying removes my pin? Okay. Pin, and let me see if I can spotlight both of us. Why is it add spotlight? There we go. Good. Okay, now we got it. Thank you so much for that beautiful reading. And don't be on mute because I'm going to be asking you some questions here. Thank you. It was very beautiful and really moving. And I am dying to know one thing, many things, but one thing in particular. You went to a graduate program in counseling. You're a counselor in a prison, and I cannot find anything in your biography or that's written about you that explains how you found poetry or how poetry found you. And so all of a sudden, here you are, you've got a debut full-length poetry collection and another chapbook. And what is your relationship to poetry? How did you find it? How did it find you?
Well, that's a great question. And I just was looking at the chat. I just want to thank everybody. Those are awesome responses. Thank you so much. Glad you enjoyed the work. Okay, so I'm just going to say, start this off by just saying real quick, when I was 10 years old, about 11, my maternal grandfather, Eustacio, for a Christmas gift, gave me a memo book that I don't know how old it was, but it had a little tiny pen in it. And it was my favorite toy for about 4 days because I just wrote, I guess Breton probably would have been happy because I was writing automatically. And it's one of my earliest memories. And this is also, I mean, I think I might have been in like kindergarten or first grade or going into it. So I knew about words. And so flash forward to 2000. So I'm a recovery person. I haven't had a drink or a drug, and I celebrated 24 years of continuous sobriety, March 12th of this year. And so I early on, one of the first things I did when I got one of my first jobs was I went to the public library and I got a library card. And I went to the poetry section and I had no idea what to do in there, but I picked, I think I got Gary Soto's, one of his collections. I got a Neruda collection. I picked a bunch of Chicanos, because I mean, it's like, okay, it's my, so I did that. And I just, within that same year, I got 3 poems published in Manzanita Quarterly, which doesn't exist anymore. But they took some poems, and I met I met a writing teacher in recovery, and he took me on. He survived Silicon Valley and brought his wife to Santa Fe to write full time, and he would guide me, and he told me, you need to go to school. There's a college here, and Dana Levin is teaching there, and I had no idea who that person was. And I had a lot of resentment against Anglos because they came and took a lot of my hometown away. And ironically, to spite that man, Michael Schofield, I applied to the College of Santa Fe, and no one was more surprised than I did when I got an acceptance letter and a full ride based on the merit of my writing. And I shared that letter with Michael, and he wept, and I didn't understand why he was weeping. And I went and I met Dana, and I met Matt, and I met Greg Glazner, and I got sent to Skidmore for their writing thing, and I met Henri Cole, and I mean, Henri Cole said, you've probably been writing ever since, you never just put it down. So I don't know, you know, I've heard things, you know, you hear things, you can't make a poet and all that. And I don't know about that. I don't know how, I don't know if poetry was a symptom of my recovery or, you know, I don't know. I mean, I really, I don't know as much as I don't know when I'm going to sit down and what's going to come out. And some people are like, wow, you organized this so beautifully. It's like, you don't understand. My definition of poetry is getting thrown into a huge airplane hangar with no windows, no door, nothing, and it's pitch black, and they tell you you need to find a light switch. It's in here somewhere. and so I don't, you know, I'm not one of those that sits down and, you know, I had a beautiful experience today. I need to put a poem. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't.
Thank you. That airplane hangar light switch is going to.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. So.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's something instinctive, or there's something, you know, spiritual or unconscious. I don't know. We don't have to label it, but there is, you found poetry in some really unusual and really fortunate ways, it sounds like. And so it sounds like it was really meant to happen. So let me ask you this, how do you think that writing the poems in Susto or even, you know, in Field Notes, how has that writing impacted your grief?
Well, I mean, I think it allows. I think any life experience, the ones that we pay attention to, I think that they're pretty ineffable. I think that we just naturally, you know, my girlfriend, like I love listening to my girlfriend talk about how I just love listening to her process her day. And I think that whether it's something that's challenging or an experience that she saw at the corner of her eye, I think that we're always processing, and I think that certain art forms, I think, lend themselves to doing more of a deep dive into some of these things. I think part of the challenge is rendering it in a way that we don't have to compromise the experience in any way. But I never know what's coming out. So I heard, I forget his name, Del Toro, the director that did the Shape of Water. And he was asked this question. He was asked, you know, the interviewer saying, you know, people don't know what to do with your movie. Are you afraid that it's not going to draw an audience? Does that matter to you? And Del Toro said, I don't care how many people see my movie. I care how deeply they feel my movie. And I think that that's the investment where I think where life and art can, you know, do this. And judging by some of the comments, at least some of the poems touch some people. And I think that's how can you not be inspired by that, you know? But I'm much more interested in what people feel and get from the work. Do I see myself as a healer? No, I don't. I don't know if you felt that way, because Kelly, I know you were in the field. But
I think that what is tremendously satisfying, I think what you're saying, Tommy, that I relate to is that, you know, if a reader or a listener, you know, has an experience, an emotional experience that's impactful from something I've written, that really means a lot. That this is everything we're doing tonight, you know, with everyone, even in the open mic, you know, it's going to, we have this shared experience of having our words, you know, reach each other in these really powerful ways with our feelings, you know, and we made a space for grief here tonight together, but also for expressing that and making it a place where we can feel deeply. I think that's what we need so much more of in the world, you know, to be there with each other, witnessing that and validating those experiences. I think that, but, you know, I do think that I know you say I'm not a cheerful poet, and I didn't say I had a beautiful experience today and write a poem about it, but there's so much beauty in your poems, Tommy, and you must be aware of that. You know, you're paying attention to, you're expressing ideas about remedies and the natural world and the moon as a thumbnail and all of the, you know, wonderful images that's a process of us all being able to say, you know, this beauty is worth being alive for and noticing.
oh yeah,
Even in our grief.
yeah,
Even
maybe especially there, maybe.
Yeah. Talking about, and thanks for talking about ancestors and, you know, bringing them into the room too. Obviously, that is what your work does. And, you know, the making sort of just figuring out how to, as human beings, acknowledge aspects of our ancestry that are really difficult to even describe, name, or just say this really happened, you know. The idea of what happened to the children, you know, it's pretty soul crushing, but bringing it into this room brings in humanity. This is our humanity we have to acknowledge.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to acknowledge that. So beautiful. So you just talk in your poem so much about the soul, and you pay so much attention to that, and you make it such a sort of really visceral felt experience in your poems. And it's, I don't know, it's really embodied. I think that's a challenging thing to do in a poem. And I think you really do it brilliantly. You really sort of give us an experience of the soul as something that is real and tangible. And so that those aspects of your writing have really moved me as well.
Thank you, Kelly.
And it's kind of astonishing. I think it seems like you've really surprised yourself, you know, with the idea that writing found you, you found writing, and now it's really been brought into this really concretized way of acknowledgement and publication and sharing. How How wonderful. So my last question for you before we move into the open mic, I guess I'm curious about whether you feel your clients experience anything about you as a poet. You know, does your poetry somehow impact the way you work or not? I mean, maybe it's ineffable, maybe it's even sort of under the surface and it's not tangible, but I'm just curious about, is there any poetry energy that you think exists in this relationship, either way, you know, coming or going from you?
Well, I facilitate, I do individual therapy. I do a lot of grief and loss therapy. But I also facilitate psychoeducational groups that offer, life skills. And so for a lot of my guys, for the majority of my guys, it's a men's prison. We have 3 levels of security. There's this country, most prisons go by the Federal Bureau of Prisons security level system. We have 3 levels of those 6. We have a maximum security facility that I worked with for my first year there. And we have a level 4, which basically houses prison gangs, and they're segregated. And I've worked there for a while. And I worked with guys that are in that context. I worked with men that are leaving a gang, a prison gang, some of them with extensions to the street. And knowing that they're doing that, they know also full well that they're placing their families in danger. And I worked at a level 2 for the last 3 years, 2.5 years. These men are getting ready to come out here in society. And so word gets out pretty quick of what you do because you're like TV. And so they know your bad days, they know your good days, they know your favorite pair of shoes, they know everything. And so it didn't take long before word got out that I was published. And the education department, we're trying to work with the mental health department and working with the Penn Project. We're trying to get a intergenerational poetry trading thing going on with the schools. I don't have the time right now to do it. We're told we're going to get more people. So actually the presence of poetry in mental health in that environment is something that I am trying to do. And so to actually do legitimately. It's being done in other prisons. I'm bringing that to the table. I'm also letting the higher ups know that there's actually a few journals out there that actually cater to incarcerated individuals. Iron City is one. And so I don't know exactly. I don't know if my job directly influences what I do. I've been given Plume magazine contacted me because they want to see something from me about prison culture. It's the first time I've done that, so I'm writing a lyric essay about that. But what I can say this is, since I've worked in the prisons, I am so conscious of eating a sandwich with my father on a Saturday morning. I'm incredibly conscious of where the sun is. I try to be as aware and mindful of my freedom. And quite frankly, I am an unconvicted felon. because of the life I lived prior to. So I try to treat gratitude far more than a noun. I try to make it a verb, to be quite honest. So those guys have done for me. I can't repay it. I try to repay it by showing up to work every day, I guess you
Yeah.
could say,
Oh
and
my
being
gosh.
as present for them as I can.